Welcome everyone. Today I have a special build with a Kick Barbarian. Yes, I have made the build for PvE and also for PvP. As you guys can see behind me, we have some of the highlights of the Kick Barbarians. We can deal some hefty damage. Let me see if I can pause when we deal some nice damage. So one of the biggest highlights with this build is that you can deal a lot of AoE damage, and you can see there's a lot of numbers. We can see a 12 million over here. And what else I can't really see. You can see a bunch of numbers. So the fun part about this build is very combo oriented, and the combination of the build is very fun. And if you already played the hotter build, you don't have to do much of adjustment. So the build itself will revolve around Kick. And if you guys haven't seen a previous video, we have made a special highlight with Kick Barbarians versus other builds in terms of PvP. So let me show you guys a little bit more. So now what we're going to do is we're going to test against a boss with the tier 4 64 Nightmare Dungeon. And here I'll be using two of my combos to two-shot the boss with a Kick build. You can see that we deal some really nice damage, and what I do is, as usual, at the end of the video, I'll show you guys my gears and those stats I used for this particular build. Now, just in case you guys haven't saw the previous video, we do have the Kick build in terms of highlights against PvP players. It is really fun, and this reminds me of this is Sparta, and you kick the guy off the roof, right? So the focus of the build is to one-shot most of the players. Now, there is a special highlight with this build in terms of PvP, is that when you have PvP, you also have neutral monsters next to you. And if you kick the neutral monster to death, you can also kick players to death with explosion damage, which is quite interesting. So one of the highlights over here, I'm facing a level 100 Barbarian, and I noticed that he is very durable. And one of the highlights for this build is you can deal splash damage on top of the players from the monsters. And here we have been fighting for a while. The Barbarian is very durable, but eventually I had a chance to kick onto the monsters and kill him by using the monsters. So let me try to show you guys the highlights over here. So notice that there's a monster over here, and the Barbarian is coming next to me. And what I'm going to do is I'll kick onto the monster, and the monster dealt 6 million damage to the monster, and the splash damage killed the super tanky Barbarian. And I do believe this happened multiple times as we were testing for PvP. So again, I'm trying to chase him, and he's very durable and very strong in terms of PvP, and he stuns a lot. Notice that there is a monster over here, and what I'm going to do is the monster exploded from my kick, and by killing the monster, he died. Let me just show you guys over here again. It's actually really fun. So here I was able to land a kick onto the monster next to him, and here notice the monster have a kick debuff. The moment he killed the monster actually killed him. So it's a really fun build. He was killing the monster, and the monster exploded and killed him. I was like, how did he die, right? So yes, this is a really interesting build, and let's get into the build details for you guys. Now coming over to the Mobilityx default builder for my build. So yes guys, finally I'm crafting my own build on the Mobilityx builder. Now, I have not had time to make the Paragon board, but I have made the skill trees and also the summaries over here. I have also added my additional notes for you guys in case you guys are wondering how to play the build with the skill rotations. So this particular build in reality will be very similar to the Hammer of Ancient, but the fun part is going to be the one-shot kick Sparta build. And this is when we kick enemies, the higher resource we have, the more damage we'll deal. Now briefly going through the skills of choice, we'll be using Launch Strike to gap close to enemies and also gain Berserk, and also gain Fury. We then use Kick at the maximum Fury to one-shot enemies. To gain Fury, we can be using Rally Cry, and we can become defensive with Challenging Shot, and finally, War Cry will provide us with additional damage. We also gain Unstoppable in terms of PvP from Rally Cry and also Berserk. You do want to spend your first kick after casting Berserk, because after spending Fury with Kick, you gain more damage with Berserk. And of course, we'll go through the rotations very soon. So in terms of the skill trees, let's go over to the skill trees first. Now I figure it will be easier if I show you guys in the game, but I'll have the links available to show you guys all the build setups and everything in details with the website. So here we'll go with 1 strike, 1 point into Launch Strike. And over here, you can see 3 points are going to Endless Fury. So this way we'll gain more Fury as we normal attack with two-handed weapon. Now it's very similar to the other builds with the top meta Barbarian build. We're going with 1 point into each of the shots each, gaining more Fury, more Unstoppable, and also more Fortify. Now it is optional to go with 2 points into the additional HP just for the bit of tankiness. Here we'll go with 5 points maximum into Kick, and Kick will provide us with additional damage per 10 Fury spent. Now one of the highlights over here is you can see I'm currently sitting on 180 Fury. I can easily get a ton of more Fury because of this. And this is from the potion that provides us with 50 more Fury, and this can be incredibly strong. Now most of the other skill choices are pretty straightforward. We go with the shouts and also a bit of healing with the shouts. As we go on to the next section, notice I have 6 out of 3 with my No Mercy. This is from the amulet, which I'll show you guys very soon. So we have a lot of critical chance. And over here we'll be gaining additional damage reduction and also bonus damage when fortified. 1 point is going to the slow with bleeding enemies, because we have a guaranteed slow with one of the legendary effects. And finally, we go with 3 points using two-handed weapon provide us with additional critical chance, additional critical strike damage. And finally, we go with Wrath of Berserker and upgrade for Wrath of Berserker for extra duration and also additional damage. So if you guys want the skill choices, you can come over here. And what I like about the Mobilityx builder is you can follow through with the leveling pathways over here as well. But of course guys, you guys will be over level 50, so you don't have to follow the pathways of course. But in the future, if we make a leveling build, this can be really good because you can see each of the points, what level that's allocated and how we do it. Now if we come over to the legendary of choice, again we have the summaries over here and you can see the gems for the weapons. But what I want to do is I want to come back in the game because as I show you guys the choice of legendaries, you can also see my current stats for this particular build. So starting with the two-handed weapon, I'm going with additional bleeding damage while berserking, because we have a lot of berserk, and for the focus of PvP, I have made a variation of the build. So what I mean by that is, if we come over to the default build, I'm using lots of builders, right? Because previously I started on the default builder. So what I'm trying to say is, you can see there's going to be a PvE build and also like a PvP build. So I think this is supposed to be PvP. So what I was trying to say is, I'm trying to do a little build variation if you guys are planning to do more PvP with this build. And then there's a variation if you plan to do more PvE. So there will be a difference and I have the links available for you guys. Now what you're looking at right now is, you're looking at the PvP build. So we go with Berserk providing more bleeding damage. On the other two hand, we go with Kick or Charge providing a tremendous AoE damage. And this is how I was able to one-shot other players, by kicking at the monsters next to them. With the one-handed weapons, I'm going with Skill Steal additional damage with Maximum Fury, which is always the case for us. And finally, we go with additional damage with Barriers. You will see a variation if you see the other build, but most of them is very similar. And finally, with one of the offensive codex, my gloves will allow me to stun bleeding enemies, which means we have multiple ways of stunning enemies in terms of PvP. Now most of my other legendaries are pretty straightforward. So here we go with bonus armor when we have additional damage to deal to enemies. And here the rings we have shot regeneration of fury and also additional cooldowns to shot. Now one of the highlights I do want to show you guys is, you might be wondering, why don't you use this particular effect that lowers the cooldown of your brawling skills? I tried this one guys, it is not that great. So this only works for 2 seconds window that lowers the brawling skill cooldown by 28% when you cast the spell. If the spell is already casted, it will not work for brawling. So it has to be before you cast it, and it's not that great in terms of lowering just for the kick cooldown. And you do gain more fury with the shots. So eventually I went back to the shots. Now if you guys are planning to do more PvE oriented, or if you're stunning enemies more consistently, you can consider taking away the increased damage from barriers and come over here to get increased damage against stunned enemies. Now in terms of my helmet, maximum fury and also cooldown reduction is a must. And here we go with the barrier increase when we fight elites. Now this is not going to be great for PvP because you might not find a lot of elites, but it can still help. As for the chest, we have basic skills reduce damage by 20%. Now for the pants, we have increased fortify when you have maximum fury. And as for the boots, you have unstoppable provide you with bonus movement speed, and will be unstoppable a lot from the shouts, from normal attack, and also from berserk. Now one thing I do want to highlight is this particular amulet. This one gives me a lot of cooldown, lots of critical chance, lots of more skills in brawling, and also damage reduction. So this is a pretty nice amulet if you're trying for the build. Don't try to pay too much for those amulets guys. If you're trying the build, I bought those amulets for about 4 to 5 million gold. So definitely don't spend too much in rolling or buying those amulets if you're trying a fun build. Now, because of the latest changes and also updates to the cooldowns of kick, your kick is currently about 6 seconds to 7 seconds cooldown, depending on your cooldown reduction, if you can get your kick to level 12. So here, notice that my pens gives me 4 levels to kick. If I take the pens off, and you can see kick is back to 7.25. So it is optional, guys, if you want to go with lower kick cooldown, because the cooldown reduction is not that dramatic, and I did spend 1 FX on the 4 levels of kick. You do not gain additional damage with kick, this is unfortunate, so I lowered kick cooldowns by 0.8 seconds, and this cost me 1 FX. It is optional, guys, if you want to go with something like this, and you can go with any of the other damage reduction FXs with the pens. Now everything else, as for the weapons, you go with close damage over core damage, because this is not a core spell. And of course for the expertise, we're going with Axe expertise, with an increased damage to vulnerable enemies, which is really good. Now, if you guys haven't subscribed, it is a really good time to do so, because I'll be covering tons of Diablo 4 related topics and also videos and also guides. We'll be looking to the top meta builds, non-meta builds, leveling up, and also Paragon tricks. We're also looking to the latest events and also official updates and also changes to different characters and also different builds in the game. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and also turn the notification on, because a lot of you who are watching the videos have not subscribed. You can see 80% of the viewers who are watching our videos have not subscribed, so make sure you subscribe to stay tuned for the latest update for Diablo 4. Now coming over to my Paragon. You're gonna see this is very similar to my Halter build, because this uses the same concept. But just to take things one step further, I decided to perk into more Maximum Fury. Now one highlight is, I have been counting my Maximum Fury from the helmet, from my rings if I plan to have them. Notice I don't have Maximum Fury. I actually crafted some of the rings for Maximum Fury. So this is one of the example of the rings. Notice it's plus 14 Maximum Fury. I also had other rings for Maximum Fury, but I actually prefer the regeneration of resource. Because if I wanted Maximum Fury, I can still come back over here for the 50 Maximum Fury, so I didn't have those on my rings. I know I'm going into so much details with the main build, right? Now, if we come over back to the Paragons, everything else is same as my Halter build. And the glyph of choice, I'm going with the glyph for vulnerability. Actually, let's start from the first. I'm going with a close damage increase for the first glyph. For the second glyph, we're going with increased damage to bleeding enemies. And this is why we have a bleeding legendary. This also provides us with more critical chance. You can see the pathing on both sides to provide us with more Maximum Fury. As for the next glyph, we're going with the Shout glyph for the cooldown reduction. And over here, we'll go with bonus damage while healthy. So you want to kick enemies when you have over 80% HP. Next glyph we're going to have increased damage while fortified. And finally, we get a guaranteed vulnerability, which is essential, and then you deal more damage with vulnerability. Now once I get time, I'll be updating the Paragon board for you guys on mobilities, and I have provided additional notes should you guys want to have a read. And I have the Paragon available for the main kick build on the D4 builders for now, as I was planning the build, so those are the same for 2 variations. Now let's come over to the skill rotations for this build. So you guys can tell, this is very similar to the Halter build, and I do want to give you guys a small warning. So this is not as strong as the Halter build because you do have a cooldown, but other than that, it's a really fun build if you like Sparta while you do it. So the goal is to use your Shout. As you cast your Shout and also your Berserk, you will gain damage reduction and also more Fury gain. Once you have enough Maximum Fury, ideally over 100%, no, about 100% Fury, you want to kick enemies, and you want to group enemies together. Because you have 2 stacks of kick, you really want to use your kick wisely, because if you use both of your kicks, then you're out of cooldowns, right? So this is the only downside compared to the Halter build. And other than that, the downside for this build is kick does not use a weapon. So kick will base on your highest damage weapon, so you cannot choose a weapon that you want to kick with. But the combo is really fun, and if you get it right, guys, you feel really satisfying with 1 or 2 kicks, especially in terms of PvP. Now a small highlight in terms of PvP is that you want to be using your launch track to hit enemies and make them bleed, and while they are bleeding, they will be much slower. They will also be more susceptible to your increased critical damage and also chances because they are bleeding. And finally, guys, if you're fighting a very tough enemy in terms of PvP, make sure you utilize the combination of kick against monsters. This can be very surprising and most players wouldn't expect this coming. So what you do is, you want to be kicking the monsters next to them. Even if the player themselves kills this monster, they will still take additional damage. So here I was able to kick the monsters next to him and deal lots of damage. And again, you can see over here, this is one of the highlights I had. I was really interested about this. I was able to kick this monster, and after that I went away. He killed the monster and killed himself. So yes, there's a lot of nice features with this build, even though it's not top meta build, and I still had a lot of fun playing it and also testing the build for you guys. And in the future guys, as promised, I will be making a no shot build. I do feel that shot is pretty top meta, but we can make builds without using shots. Now before I finish, I forgot to mention guys, you can be crafting this legendary codex with the Oculus. So make sure you don't have to look for this legendary codex, you can craft this one onto the Oculus. And this is how I got over 23,000 bonus damage with kick and charge for exploding damage. So make sure you check the Oculus to craft this one. You can craft the helmet on Oculus, and finally craft at the Oculus for the Codex. The Codex is what gives you additional stats after level 100. So make sure you check for those three at the Codex for the Oculus for the additional bonus stats. Now over here, I'll provide you guys with a tier 64 testing replay for this particular build. And make sure to look at the timestamps for the end part for all the gears and also all the stats.
Now before you go, and if you guys didn't know, we have a new YouTube channel. And if you guys haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe and check out the behind the scenes and also fun clips and also more stories about us. And then you get to know me a little more personally instead of just reading the news and also the games, right? So I want to share a little bit more with you guys. So make sure you check this channel out if you're interested about Matt and also Uni. She's really funny too, and she's really shy. So I want to give her a surprise and do a shout out for the new channel to get some subscribers. Thank you guys. I'll see you guys next time.